Most people love the idea of building a billion-dollar business, but very few people understand what it actually takes. And I can tell you from experience, after working in M&A consulting and seeing hundreds of transactions up close, billion-dollar exits usually do not happen because of one magic tactic, one lucky break, or one brilliant idea. They happen because of identity, vision, structure, recurring revenue, and years of disciplined execution. And today I want to walk you through one of the most fascinating real world case studies I've ever seen. It was a healthcare services business built by a physician, not a tech founder, not a Wall Street insider, not someone building in an easy industry, a doctor, in one of the hardest industries to scale, healthcare services. And eventually, this business reached a 10-digit valuation. So, in this video, I want to break down what this founder did differently, why the business became so valuable, and what every other business owner, physician, CPA, attorney, or professional can learn from it. Because even if you are not trying to build a billion-dollar company, these same principles can help you build a business that is more profitable, more scalable, more durable, and less dependent on you. Before we jump in, my name is Sean Chakarami, and this is the Naples Commission, where we talk about business, wealth, leadership, and legacy for business owners and families here in Southwest Florida. If that sounds valuable to you, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. And if you want the written version of this breakdown, comment billion and I'll send you the link. Let's get into it. Here's the first thing you have to understand. If you're a doctor, CPA, attorney, consultant, or any other professional services provider, you've probably heard some version of this before. The value of your practice is basically you. And honestly, in many cases, that is true. If the business depends entirely on your personal reputation, your labor, your client relationships, your decision making, and your ability to deliver the service, then you may have a great income stream, but you do not necessarily have a scalable enterprise. You may have a very profitable business, you may serve clients extremely well, and you may have a great reputation in the marketplace. But if everything still depends on you, what you really have is a high income job. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is very different from building enterprise value. A buyer does not pay a premium just because the owner works hard. A buyer pays for something that can continue, grow, and produce cash flow after the founder is no longer at the center of everything. That is the real question. Can the business operate without you? Can it scale without you? Can the revenue continue without you? Can the brand mean something beyond your personal name? That is the difference between building income and building enterprise value. And this physician figured it out. The first thing this founder did differently was simple, but it changed everything. He did not see himself as just a physician. He was a physician, of course. He cared about medicine. He cared about patients. He cared about the quality of care. But he also saw himself as a business builder. And that identity shift matters because many professionals master their craft but never master the business fundamentals around their craft. Doctors master medicine, attorneys master law, CPAs master accounting. But the ones who build truly valuable businesses eventually realize technical excellence is only the foundation. At some point, you also have to learn marketing, operations, hiring, systems, leadership, capital contracts, legal structure, incentives, and scale. You have to learn the language of enterprise value. And when you begin to see yourself as an owner, operator, strategist, and builder, you start asking better questions. Not just, how do I serve more patients? But how do I build a model that can serve more patients without requiring me to personally deliver every unit of value? That is a totally different question. And better questions lead to better businesses. Because if you only see yourself as the technician, you will usually build a technician-dependent business. But if you see yourself as the architect, you start building a system. That was the first unlock. The second thing he did well was vision. He started his practice in the 1980s, long before urgent care centers were on every street corner. At that time, the traditional primary care model was still dominant. People had their family doctor. The healthcare system moved slower. Convenience was not yet the driving force it is today. But he saw where the market was going. He understood that people wanted healthcare that was quicker, more affordable, and more convenient. They did not always need an emergency room, and they did not always want to wait weeks for a primary care appointment. They needed accessible care that fit modern life. So instead of building just another traditional medical practice, he positioned the business around what would eventually become a massive trend: urgent care. That is what great entrepreneurs do. They do not just respond to current demand, they anticipate future demand. They see friction in the marketplace before everyone else has a name for it. Then they build the solution while everyone else is still debating whether the trend is real. And by the time the rest of the market catches up, they already have brand equity, operational experience, location, systems, and a head start. And that head start compounds. So, lesson number 2 is this: enterprise value is often created by seeing where the world is going before everyone else gets there. The third thing he did may have been the biggest unlock. He did not only grow by opening one location at a time, that would have been linear growth. One clinic, then another, probably in the same city or surrounding geography. And listen, that can still create a good business, but it usually does not create exponential enterprise value. Instead, he studied the franchise model. He looked at McDonald's and understood something very important. The power was not just in owning every location. The power was in creating a repeatable model that other people could operate. That was the unlock. He built the brand, he built the marketing, he refined the operating model, then he franchised the concept. That allowed the business to multiply across geographies much faster than if he had tried to own and operate every single location by himself. And this is a major lesson for business owners. A lot of people are trying to scale through addition: more hours, more employees, more personal effort, more locations, more hustle. But the biggest companies often scale through multiplication. They build a system, brand, process, platform, or model that other people participate in. And that is where enterprise value begins to expand. Because buyers do not just pay for income, they pay for repeatability, they pay for durability, they pay for transferability, they pay for infrastructure, they pay for a business that can keep growing. That is what the franchise model gave him. It turned his practice from a local service business into a scalable platform. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Once he began franchising, his primary customer changed. At the beginning, his customer was the patient. But once the business became a franchise platform, his primary customer became the franchise owner. Now, that does not mean patients stopped mattering. Of course, patients mattered. The quality of care was still essential. The brand still depended on patient experience. But the franchisor's direct business relationship was now with the providers and entrepreneurs who owned and operated franchise locations. And that required a major shift in thinking. He had to ask, what do franchise owners need to succeed? They need brand recognition, marketing, staffing, medical supplies, real estate, operational support, systems, a model they can trust. And this founder understood something a lot of fast-growing businesses forget: growth without standards destroys value. So he kept the bar high. He did not just sell franchises to anyone who could write a check. He protected the brand. That matters because brand can take decades to build and only a few bad operators to damage. A founder who only chases growth asks, how many more can we sell? A true enterprise builder asks, how do we grow without compromising the system that made this valuable in the first place? That is the difference between growth and scalable value. Now, this next piece is the genius of the whole story. Once he understood the needs of his franchise owners, he started seeing every recurring problem as a potential recurring revenue stream. That is a completely different way of thinking. Most businesses solve problems reactively. A franchisee needs help hiring employees, needs help with medical supplies, needs a location, needs marketing support. Most companies might treat those as service issues. He treated them as strategic opportunities. He already had the marketing and branding side of the business. Then, when franchise owners struggled to identify and retain mid-level providers and front office employees, he created a recruiting and temporary staffing business line. When he recognized the purchasing power across the system, he negotiated large-scale supply contracts with major distributors like Cardinal and McKesson, and then sold medical supplies to the franchisees through a separate subsidiary. When franchisees needed locations and when locations changed hands, he used another subsidiary to buy, sell, and maintain the real estate and buildings. So the business was no longer just an urgent care brand. It became an entire ecosystem: marketing, staffing, supplies, real estate, brand, operating model, and the support infrastructure. He was no longer just selling the name. He was controlling and participating in the key inputs needed to operate the business. That is how coherent diversification creates enterprise value. And I want to emphasize that word coherent because this was not random diversification. This was not a founder getting distracted by every new opportunity. Every new business line solved a real problem inside the core business. Every subsidiary made the franchise model stronger. Every solution created more consistency, more control, more margin, and more recurring revenue. That is the difference between distraction and strategy. Now, none of this works without structure. And this is where a lot of business owners miss it. Vision is powerful, but vision without structure eventually becomes chaos. In this case, the business was supported by a superb legal team. The franchisees entered into exclusive agreements. If you wanted to be part of the franchise system, the franchisor controlled the core support: employees, real estate, marketing, supplies, and other services. That created predictable, recurring, consistent revenue across multiple subsidiaries, and all of those subsidiaries sat under one holding company. That matters because sophisticated buyers care about structure. They care about contracts. They care about legal enforceability. They care about customer concentration. They care about recurring revenue, and they care about margin. They care about the scalability of the business. They care whether the business can continue to grow after the founder leaves. A lot of entrepreneurs focus almost entirely on revenue, but enterprise value is not just about how much the business makes. It is about the quality of the earnings. Is it recurring? Is it contracted? Is it diversified? Is it scalable? And is it transferable? Is it protected or is it dependent on the founder alone? Is it supported by systems? That is the difference between a profitable business and a highly valuable enterprise. Now, here's the part most people do not always want to hear. This did not happen overnight. It took roughly 30 years. And I know that is not the sexy internet message. It is not scale to 8 figures in 18 months. It is not one funnel away. It is not 3 hacks to $1 billion exit. But it's honest. Real enterprise value usually compounds slowly at first before it compounds suddenly. The founder had to build the original practice, then recognize the market opportunity, then develop the operating model, then build the brand, then franchise the system, and then support the franchisees, then add other business lines, then protect the entire ecosystem legally, then grow across more than 23 states and keep refining until the business became something a sophisticated buyer could understand, trust, and value. That is what $1 billion exit actually looks like. Not one thing, not one trick, not one hack, a long obedience in the same strategic direction over time. So what's the key takeaway? You may not want to build $1 billion company. Most people don't need to. But every business owner can learn from how $1 billion companies are built because the principles still apply. Identity, vision, structure, recurring revenue, brand, systems, and knowing who your real customer is. Owning more of the ecosystem. And patience. The best businesses are usually not built by chasing every shiny object. They are built by seeing clearly, thinking strategically, executing consistently, and allowing value to compound over time. So here are the 5 lessons in simple terms. 1. Expand your identity. Do not be just another technician. Become the business builder. 2. Anticipate the market. Do not only respond and react where demand is today. Pay attention to where it's going. 3. Scale through multiplication. Build systems, models, and platforms that can grow beyond your personal effort. 4. Understand your real customer. As your business evolves, your customer may evolve too. And 5. Build an ecosystem. Turn repeated problems into structured, recurring, coherent revenue streams. That is how a business becomes more than a practice. It becomes a platform. And platforms are where enterprise value gets very interesting. If this was valuable, subscribe to the Naples Commission today. I'm building this channel for business owners, professionals, and families who care about business, wealth, leadership, and legacy. And this video is also a preview of a larger series I'm developing called the Business Owner's Playbook. In that series, I'll be walking through the real lessons of starting, owning, scaling, and eventually exiting a business in the modern economy. We'll talk about making the jump, surviving the valley, building sustainable revenue, delegating, scaling, replacing yourself, and planning your exit and legacy. Because making money is one thing, building enterprise value is another, and building a legacy is the real game. If you want the written article that goes deeper in this case study, comment billion and I'll send you the link. And if you know another business owner, doctor, CPA, attorney, or professional who needs to think bigger about what they are building, share this video with them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.